Now we came to the last topic of this video tutorial, and this last topic is how can we work with tables. There will be a few types of questions like this, probably towards the further lectures. You might have not come across with this yet, but I'd like to expose you to some calculations, some very basic calculations with tables. You might want to fast forward this video or just stop the video here and come back to this once you have gone through the theoretical background for these kind of calculations, so it would make more sense to you. So, question is, compute the monopolist revenue, marginal revenue and marginal cost. Please show the formulas you have used to reach your results. So first of all, we need to be able to calculate revenue, marginal revenue and cost, and for those we need to know the correct formula. Now revenue is always calculated by price times quantity, and the marginal revenue is nothing else but the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. And by total revenue we mean revenue here, and the marginal cost is the same as the change in the total cost divided by the change in the quantity. Now first of all, when we need to calculate the marginal revenue, we will need to know the change in total revenue. For that we need to know the revenue first. So the revenue or total revenue is always price times quantity. Now we've got the price, we've got the quantity, now we just need to calculate the price times quantity. So 20 times 7, so the total revenue here would be 140. The total revenue here would be 19 times 8, which is 152. In this case 18 times 9, which is 162. 17 times 10, which is 170, and 16 times 11, which is 176. Now I've got all the total revenues. Now to be able to calculate the marginal revenue, I need the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. Now the change in total revenue will be total revenue later minus total revenue now. And the change in quantity will be the quantity later minus the quantity now. For this kind of calculation, I don't know what was the total revenue before, so I will not be able to calculate the marginal revenue for price 20 and quantity 7, but I will be able to calculate it for this combination. So the change in total revenue for this part will be 152 minus 140. And that needs to be divided by the change in quantity. Now the change in quantity will be 8 minus 7. Well, that's just 1. And if I look at the change in quantity is always 1 for every single one of these rows in the table. So I will always have to divide by 1, but dividing by 1 makes no difference. So the marginal revenue in this particular case, when the quantity only grows by 1, will always be just the change in the total revenue. So what's the difference between 152 and 170? Sorry, 152 and 140 is 12. So the marginal revenue is 12 for this particular price and quantity combination. How would that differ in here? So the change in total revenue now would be 162 minus 152, and I would need to divide that by the change in quantity, which is 1, because 9 minus 8 makes it 1. That will be 10. 162 minus 152 is 10. 10 divided by 1 gives you 10. The next one, 170 minus 162, again divide by 1. The difference between 170 and 162 is just 8. And the last calculation, 176 minus 170 divide by 1. Again, remember, 11 minus 10 makes 1. That's the change in quantity. And anything divided by 1 just gives the same amount. 176 minus 170 gives me 6. 6 divided by 1 is 6. So that was the marginal revenue. But how do I calculate the marginal cost? Well, the marginal cost will be the change in total cost. And the change in total cost again will be the later total cost minus the earlier or now total cost. So again, I can't really calculate the total cost in here because I don't know what was before. So for this, the total cost cannot be calculated. Therefore, the marginal cost cannot be calculated either. So I can calculate the marginal cost first for this row. So the total cost, the change in total cost is 45 minus 36. And that again needs to be divided by 8 minus 7. Well, change in quantity, just like in the marginal revenue calculations, always 1, because the quantity only grows by 1. So I will have to do the division by 1. So that will be just equal to the difference. So what's the difference between 45 and 36? Well, that is 9. 9 divided by 1 gives me 9. So the marginal cost for the next row is 54 minus 45 divided by 1. Again, 9 minus 8 gives me 1. So 54 minus 45, that's again will be 9. The next one is 63 minus 54 over 1 again, because 10 minus 9 gives me 1. 63 minus 54, that's 9. And the last one is 72 minus 63 divided by 1. And surprise, surprise, that is also 9. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this slide, you probably want to revisit this video once you have a little bit more understanding of how these revenue and cost tables work. And the last thing I would like to talk about in this video, again, is something you might have not covered just yet. And this is about strategies and Nash equilibrium. But I'm not going to go into much details about how the equilibriums work. I just want to make sure that you understand how to read these tables, because I came across with quite a few students who got confused about what number belongs to whom in these types of tables. So here's the scenario. You run a company, and the company you are competing against also producing similar products. The question is now, should you advertise or should you not advertise? When would you get a higher profit? What would be better for you? Now, before we go into the nitty-gritty parts of finding out how one company reacts to another company's strategy, what I want to make sure is that you know how to read these tables. Now, as you can see in here, there are number pairs. These numbers are the so-called ordered pairs, which I already mentioned at the very beginning of this video. How to read this table? This is me, this is my company, and I can either advertise or don't advertise. And this is the rival, and the rival can again advertise or not advertise. What's important in here is that in all of these ordered pairs, whoever is on the left-hand side is always the first number, and whoever is on the top is always the second number. So basically, in this table, for this particular scenario, the first number is always my company, and the second number is always the rival company. So it means that in this particular scenario, I owed 5 million, let's say, and my rival also earns 5 million. But in this scenario, I owe 1 million while my rival owes 15 million. Similarly, the other two. Now, and this is where the different rows and different columns come in. This is me advertising, So this scenario, these two number combinations in here, is when I advertise and my rival either advertise or don't advertise. And in this scenario is when I don't advertise and my rival is either advertising or don't advertising. So what is going on in here? If both of us are advertising, both of us earn 5 million. If neither of us advertises, we both earn 10 million. Whoever decides not to advertise and the other one is advertising, the person who's not advertising only gets 1 million, while the person who is advertising gets 15 million. So in this scenario, my company doesn't advertise, but the rival company advertises, because that is in the cross-section of these two. And that means because I'm the first number, I only owe 1 million, and because the rival is the second number, they earn 15 million. However, in this cell here, I advertise, so I earn 15 million, and my rival doesn't advertise, so they only earn 1 million. So whoever decides not to advertise and the other is advertising, there is a huge earning difference between the two companies. So what would be your tactic to maximize your profit, given that your rival can choose their own action? Which means that whatever I choose to do, the rival can go and choose their own tactic. So what is the two possibilities ahead of me? Okay, I can advertise. So if I advertise and my rival either also chooses to advertise, we both earn 5 million. But if my rival chooses not to advertise, I will earn 15 million and they will only earn 1 million. Now, if I decide to go to advertise, the best scenario for me would be if my rival would choose not to advertise. But the rival would be quite a silly company to not to advertise, because then they would only earn 1 million instead of 5 million. So if I'm going down to on the road of advertising, my rival will also advertise, because it's better for them to earn 5 million than to earn 1 million. So what happens if I don't advertise? Well, in an ideal world, if both of us would choose not to advertise, then we both would earn nice 10 millions. However, we are competitors. We all want to maximize our own profit. So if my rival knows that I'm not going to advertise, they're going to choose to advertise. Why? Because instead of 10 million, they could earn 15 million. And quite frankly, 5 million difference is a nice big difference. So they would definitely go for advertising, and I would lose out because I would only earn 1 million. So for me, the best choice would be to go with advertising. And I either earn 5 million or 15 million, depending on how quick my rival is at getting in there and starting advertising. Now, would this tactic be different if the rival would be choosing? Would the rival go with something different? Now, when you look at this table, the rival position is always the second. So the rival can either advertise, this would be these two scenarios, or don't advertise, it would be these two scenarios. So if the rival advertises, then again, there is still two scenarios depending on if I advertise or if I don't advertise. Obviously, for the rival would be better if I didn't advertise, but that would be no good for me, because if I don't advertise, I basically let the rival own the whole market and they would get a nice fat profit, and I would lose out quite a bit. So if the rival decides to advertise, I will have to go by advertising, because I want to maximize my own profits given the circumstances. Now, what happens if the rival decides not to advertise? Well, if the rival decides not to advertise, there are two scenarios here again. Either I'm earning 15 and he's earning 1, or we both earning 10. Well, again, just like in my case, which we went through previously, I'm not going to choose not to advertise, because if I don't advertise, I would only earn 10 million. But if I do advertise, I would earn 15 million. So that is a big difference there. So I would definitely go for advertising. And therefore, my rival would end up with only 1 million income or 1 million profit. So that is not a good tactic for them to use. So for them to maximize profit would also go for the advertising. In this first tutorial, which introduced you to the basic mathematical skills that are needed for microeconomics for business, we covered how to read mathematical notation. We went into some details about the delta notation, which refers to the changes. Then we looked a little bit about how to use the scientific calculator. We went into some details in percentage calculations. We looked at the negative numbers, which are very important for elasticity calculations. And then we spent some time on the different types of elasticity calculations. And in the last few slides, we looked at how to read tables. Now, as I mentioned before, these last two tables might not be very familiar just yet, but later on in the lectures, you will come across them, and then you might want to revisit this tutorial then. I hope you find these useful, and if you have further questions, you can contact me and book a tutorial.